All right, guys, welcome back to the very end of the Barren Grounds by David A. Robertson. You know the sign that you have read an incredibly wonderful book when you're near the end of the story and you don't want it to end. You're sad that the story is coming to its conclusion. Okay, and that's exactly how I feel in this book. Epilogue. Now, an epilogue is an ending to a story. And often what will happen in an epilogue will be that either it maybe ties up some loose ends of the story. You learn how people are now living their lives. Or sometimes an epilogue will set the reader up to the next part of the story that's coming after. So we'll see what this epilogue does. Epilogue. "Good morning, Ghost," Emily said. Oh, Emily. So she's a character way back at the beginning of the story who is becoming friends with Morgan. And she was the girl who actually got the new sketch pad for Eli when his was run over by the bus in the puddle. "Good morning, Ghost," Emily said. As usual, after Morgan had walked Eli to his locker, Emily was there to meet her while she exchanged her backpack for her first period binder and textbook. "Good morning, Huldzie," Morgan gave Emily a hug. Okay, so their relationship has very much increased. They have become good friends. They're calling each other nicknames, Ghost, Huldzie, and we also have them giving each other a hug, so that's lovely. Emily patted Morgan on the back for the duration of the hug, while also saying, with a very clear tone of confusion, "I didn't really take you for a hugger there, Morg." The embrace ended. Somehow, even though she was exhausted, Morgan had so much energy that she felt as though she couldn't contain herself, like she'd had a cup or 5 of James's coffee. She was almost bouncing in place at the lockers with Emily, a new kind of dance in the crowd of teens. Morg. "That's ironic because I've never felt so alive," she said playfully. So a play on words, Morg, short form for Morgan. But then this spelling of morgue is a morgue where you go to or a body goes to when it's dead. They go and they're held in the morgue. Okay. "What's gotten into you?" Emily laughed, looking at Morgan sideways. "Yesterday I thought you might spontaneously combust." "Yesterday," Morgan said thoughtfully. She was still forgetting that to everybody else on Earth, the night had passed as a night should pass. Emily had last seen Morgan just yesterday. But Morgan had last seen Emily last week. "Right, yeah, I just had a good night. I'm a changed girl. Everybody can change, you know." Emily laughed. They closed their lockers and walked together on their way to English. "Oh, hey, did that drawing pad work out?" Emily asked. "Did the kid living with you like it?" "My brother," Morgan said. "Did your brother like it?" Emily asked. "Yeah," Morgan said. "We both did." In English class, Morgan sat at her usual seat, right in front of Mrs. Edwards' desk, close enough to read the spine on her teacher's masterpiece. All 10 copies of it. Emily had sat beside Morgan, and when the bell rang to start class, she saw Mrs. Edwards do a double take. Morgan could hardly blame her. It was the first time she had sat beside anybody in ELA. In fact, in all her classes, she sat beside somebody only if there was absolutely no other choice. Morgan had a new poem face down on her desk, and as soon as Mrs. Edwards sat, Morgan reached over and handed the work to her. Mrs. Edwards accepted it. "Did you find your passion?" Morgan looked at Emily, who nodded at her with encouragement, then looked back at her teacher. She'd written it before leaving for school, while the trip with Eli to Mizwa was still fresh in her mind. She hadn't left herself much wiggle room, but it was one of those magical times when the words just came out. It was like she wasn't even writing them. "I think I did," Morgan said. Mrs. Edwards didn't want to wait to read Morgan's poem. She wheeled the television set to the front of the room, something the entire class was overjoyed to see, even cheered for, because it essentially meant no class. Stranger Than Fiction. It was always a movie about writing. Started playing moments later. The students watched the movie, Emily watched Morgan, and Morgan watched Mrs. Edwards' eyes move back and forth. At last, she placed the poem on her desk and seemed content to wait out the class while the movie played on. When the bell rang, all the students filed out of the room except Morgan, who was held back by Mrs. Edwards. The teacher didn't say a word to Morgan, just handed her the sheet of paper, nodded, and left. Alone now, Morgan flipped over the paper to find red lettering across the top of it. "I knew you could do more, and I hope you know now that now do even better. B plus." B plus? Morgan started to feel the heat in her chest. She took a deep breath, and the burning sensation went away. She got a B plus. So what? There was more inspiration to find on the adventures that lay ahead. I think she wanted to have an A. And here's her poem. On the Barren Grounds. It took sinking under blinding white to emerge another me. Somebody I forgot I was. Someone I could never see. It took facing my worst fears, stepping out into the night, to find that I was brave enough before I found the light. It took me going far away to feel this close to you. It took dreaming of a memory to change what I thought I knew. It took stars within the sky to guide my way back home, that I'll always know the way wherever I might roam. And so there's the end of our story. So this is the Barren Grounds. What a wonderful story. And what's even more wonderful is that is book 1 of the Mizwa Sagwa. There are more books to come. All right. Thank you so much for sharing this story with me. And thank you to David Robertson for writing such a wonderful book. All right, guys. Take care.